Hello everyone, welcome back to another edition of Summoner Sunday, where I just go over my most recent Nexus Night event and kind of my thoughts for the week on Riftbound. So let's just hop into the deck tech. I went to a local shop and we had a small enough number to actually try best of 3 for our Nexus Night. So I ended up playing Lux because it's the only deck that I had on me that had a sideboard available. So I went ahead and played Lux. Chosen champion here, we have the Crown Guard. I think this one is pretty strong just as a really meaningful threat here. And I think the other one has its uses, but your baseline wanting this extra ramp is great to have. The only thing that I wish that it had is some way to better protect it. Because being a 2-might character, even in base, that's really risky to hold on to. Kaisa in particular can really pick it off. So just be aware that this one is really important to have, but if you really don't think you're going to be able to keep it, just don't spend the turn casting it. It's fine, you can operate without it. So that is my Legend and Champ. Going into the deck list, I was running 3 Stupefies. This one really is not one that makes a big difference a lot of the time. So consider this mostly just a way to churn through your deck faster. Fire this off whenever is reasonable, especially if you have an opponent who's running the Dreaming Tree. Make sure you just fire this off on your own guys and get churning through your deck. There will be a couple times where you'll find that it's useful to kind of force a second card out of their hand by casting a Stupefy to make a trade into, or make a winning combat for your opponent into a trade. But generally, just fire these off as soon as you can just to get them out of your hand, move on to further cards. It's in a way reducing your deck size because they're so easy to get out. Moving on to my first set of units, we have, for 2-drops, we have the Soaring Scouts, the Ravenbloom Students, and a single Poro. This number felt okay for this deck right now. This is much more control-y than the versions I've played of this deck in the past, and so you don't need as much of the low-cost guys. I would consider maybe going up one additional one. When the next set comes out, I'll definitely be looking to upgrade some of these, because a lot of these don't feel super great. Ravenbloom Student works well with Stupefy, but otherwise it's rare for you to get more than one trigger off of this, making it kind of hard to get max value out of this one, unlike with some of the other decks in the Mind domain for right now. Soaring Scout is great, especially if you're just going first. You just steal a battlefield and then just let it die. You have no problems getting value out of that extra rune. So definitely throw him in there and get him killed. Next after that, we have some removal spells. I'm running 3 Call to Weeks and 2 Hidden Blades. The Hidden Blade, one of the biggest reasons why I'm not running more of this one is the way this deck plays out is you end up really trying to grind your opponent out. And a lot of times giving them 2 cards can be kind of detrimental. So just be aware of the kind of downside to that. I do really like that it has hidden so that I can get it out of hand off of a just a recycle, which can be really useful to set it up. Your opponents will likely know that it's there and won't really play into it, but being able to always get your cards back out by just doing a draw 2 is a great place to be. The next up we have are my 3-drop units. I'm running 3 of the Eager Apprentice. This guy is pretty fragile. He is great when you can have him set up and let you cast a spell that you otherwise couldn't on your opponent's turn. Just know that he's fragile. There was at least one game this week where if my opponent had sniffed out that I needed his cost reduction and targeted him instead of a different guy with one of the removal spells, then I would have gotten really punished for it. But luckily my opponent didn't catch on to the idea that I was holding up exact mana or exact energy for a spell with this guy included. So if they had taken him out, I would have been able to use my action spell on top of it. But because I didn't, I was able to get a really strong blowout in a way that would not have worked with another guy. Next, I'm running 3 Faithful Manufacturers. This is my favorite 3-drop. Obviously, it's not necessarily really above rate or anything like that, but being able to get out 2 bodies makes it a lot harder, and your opponents have to invest more in actually clearing your whole board. You will be running a bunch of removal spells, so your 1/1 recruit is actually pretty valuable in conquering. So this guy is just our all in all best 3-drop unit. After that, we have 1 Noxian Drummer and 2 Vanguard Captains. Vanguard Captain is obviously the stronger card, but the power cost is actually quite detrimental, especially if you draw this as your only early play. This can be really harmful to your development, whereas at least the Noxian Drummer doesn't have a power cost, and otherwise they are somewhat similar. Obviously the Drummer is worse, but a reasonable replacement. I just didn't want to go up to 3 of these with a power cost, so I just stuck with the Drummer instead. After that, last 3-drop spell we have right here is back-to-back. I wasn't sold on this one at first, but the more I've played with it, the more I've liked it. I do think that probably 2 is the correct number, because 3 costs for this is actually pretty reasonably expensive, but it has definitely helped me get a couple extra cards out of Kaisa by kind of letting them try to use their removal spell and then giving my guys a buff to where they have to stack on more removal spells, or otherwise making it hard for them to get in with maybe an early accelerated Kaisa into a Ravenbloom student or something like that. It can work out pretty nicely there. Force them to use their retreat without getting the card draw from Kaisa can be pretty good. Next up, I have 1 of Echo. I think I probably want to go up to 2 of this one, but for now he is just as a 1 of. He's really there just as a cheaper accelerate unit that I can cast on a turn with a spell, whereas the Thousand-Tailed Watcher, I really can never cast it on a turn where I'm also using a removal spell to trigger Lux. The other advantage he does have is once you've accelerated to take a battlefield, if your opponent goes back and kills him, you can restand all of your runes and then use a removal spell on their turn, which can really be a big blowout if you can kind of set that up. Your opponent thinks that they've got a really effective way of clearing board. You let this one go, and then you can get their guys so that they can't get their extra point, for example. Next, moving on to my 5-drops and the stuff that starts triggering Lux ability. First up, we have Falling Comet. This one I 100% would run at 3. It is a great card, no power cost. Can be used on their turn, although oftentimes you're just blowing up something on your turn so that you can move in with a recruit afterwards. But definite 3 of in the deck. Does near about everything you want. And if you happen to have any of those stupefies left behind, you can even clear out something like a Thousand-Tailed Watcher with Falling Comet plus the stupefy. After that, we have 1 Imperial Decree. I'm kind of on the fence on this one. I think this one could be a card that I cut to go up somewhere else, just because I'm only running the single copy, so it's hard for me to find it when I need it. And then there's a lot of times where it's a really awkward card that just doesn't work very well. I found that a lot of times my opponents will have enough reactions to prevent me from being able to do the ideal play, which is play this and then go in with 1 recruit on each battlefield and clear both battlefields. It doesn't typically work that way. So it's one that I'm kind of on the fence on. Moving on to another card that is definitely a full play set. The Singularity is great. I used this pretty much every time that I had an opportunity to. Didn't matter if I was hitting 2 targets or just 1, it was just always good. Super great card. Even when you have to pay the 2 power or whatever. And that is one of the reasons why Lux can be so important, is because if you have to set yourself back on development to use a Singularity early, this Lux makes up for the energy lost, and then you can really stay in the game. After that, We have 3 of the Recruit the Vanguard. This is our main way, it feels like, of generating bodies. We have all of our 3 drops that are good to go in the mid game, but I feel like a lot of times the way you turn the corner on the density on your board is by playing out these. I like that you can play it out on your opponent's turn, giving your guys kind of like pseudo accelerate, and it works pretty nicely in the deck. Being able to draw you card and everything like that. It's just hits a lot of the correct marks. I would be very interested to see other cards with this style where you're playing a spell to get board presence. I think that will be the trick to making Lux more viable, is allowing you to trigger your legend ability while still generating bodies on board. After that, we have the 1 of Grand Stratagem. You rarely will need more than 1 of these. I had to use 1 on defense at one point in the game, but it was a double hold, so I was able to use it to win the game. So it does have its uses outside of that single turn, just go for it. But you sometimes don't accumulate enough bodies, especially with the pace of some other decks. You might just have to be playing removal spell, and your board doesn't end up getting as wide as you'd like to. Obviously in Victor this is great because for one energy he can just keep making guys every turn. But definitely a strong 1 of that if you find it when you don't need it, you can just kind of hold on to it without too much downside because your deck is churning through cards. And then the final card in the main deck is this Final Spark. I like this just as a 1 of it. I'm cosplaying as Lux essentially when I play this deck, and I have no problems playing a potentially wonky card for just a 1 of, just to fit the mood. I will say that every time that I was drawing it, I didn't feel like it was a dead card. It was a suboptimal card a lot of the time, but there were some times where it was doing things that other cards couldn't. This kills Thousand-Tailed Watcher without any difficulty. It can deal with Dead Bloom for just a single power for playing for the deflect. It is an all-in-all good card, just worse than a lot of other options that you might be interested in. If you were trying to build a better version of the deck, you might just put these in the sideboard just as extra removal and use Blast of Power from the Proving Ground set instead. So yeah, that is the main deck. Moving on to the runes next. I did 6 and 6, which worked out very nicely for me. If anything, I think there's maybe an argument to maybe take out the Imperial Decree and the Grand Stratagem and then go a little bit heavier on blue, but this was really close to what I needed. I think there was only one time when I was worried that I wasn't going to find the right runes, but because your deck operates on a lot of runes most of the game, you are usually able to get back the ones that you've recycled. So you're really kind of scraping the bottom in certain situations, but you're usually able to make the 6/6 work. I think the 7/5 blues to yellows would be reasonable too, but you would probably want to take out some of your yellow costs just a little bit. But otherwise, this was a pretty solid. This felt pretty solid. Not too many notes there. Moving on to the battlefields I ran. Trifarian War Camp is definitely the one I wanted to run every first game. This is just good with all of your bodies. One of the things that can get you is if your opponents are playing more efficiently than you, you can always use your extra recruits to buff up this one to catch up on value for your guys. And it just seems to work pretty well. Not quite as strong as in a few other decks, but I do think that this is probably a really solid one to choose. When you are going first, I'm picking Arenas. I have Arenas Greatest right now. I think it's a little worse now that I've made some updates to the deck, but there were definitely some games where against maybe a Aurora kind of deck, you really want to push the game to its conclusion early. And being able to kind of know that this is coming really helps. And you can just keep your hand better knowing how to make this work. It also is one where if you can lock up the game with removal spells early enough, then it means that you have to hold on for a shorter amount of time. Definitely a questionable one. I'm not sure exactly what is the correct battlefield to replace it with. But I do think that there's some justification for it here. And then your going second, Battlefield Tarragon's Peak. If you can go on, you're going second, you use your 3 Dawn to play one of your 3 drops, get some guys out. Then on your 5 Dawn, or 5, I'm used to One Piece, on your 5 rune turn, use 2 of them for a removal spell, either Cold a Week or Hidden Blade, Conquer, and then at the end of the turn, Ready to, and that gives you enough to use like a Falling Star as, or a Falling Comet as a removal spell on their turn, which can be a really strong turn. Alternatively, if you have to use the 5 for a removal spell just outright, and then you can Conquer, you can use the 2 for those Hidden Blade or whatever, which feels like a little bit less optimal because of the surprise factor is a little less effective there. Your opponents won't play around you having a giant removal spell as much as they will you playing around having a smaller removal spell. So just something to consider. So those are the battlefields. Now the final thing I want to go over for this deck list is the sideboard. So unsurprisingly, I'm running a yellow deck. I'm going to be running 3 salvages for Aurora or for the what's it called, the hook decks. I did see Aurora this week, so I was really glad to have these, and I really was able to kind of push my opponent out of the game at the end. Even though they had the Auroras and the Sabotage, I was able to have both of these, and great card to have. And then the worst case is it's a draw one, which you can take advantage of. Next up, we have Unchecked Power. I am running 2 of these right now. I don't know. It's probably worth getting a 3rd one. I just have to actually go out and acquire it because they're a little hard to find here locally. So getting a 3rd one would probably be correct. I did get to clear up an opponent's, that same Aurora player. There was a moment where they got 2 bodies on board. I was able to uncheck power, clear the board, and have a pretty good setup for the following turn. So yeah, just a all in all strong card. I don't know if 3 is correct or not, but the 2 that I was running came in a lot of matchups. After that, I'm running 2 Imperial Decrees. Like I said, I'm not really certain on these ones, and I think I might try swapping these out for something different in the sideboard. I did never bring them in, and I'm not fully clear on the matchup where it would be correct over some of my other cards. So I think I might just need to adjust my plans to include something else. And then finally, the 1 Lux Illuminated. This is definitely one that I should have brought in against Kai'Sa. I did not. Because this Lux is so vulnerable versus Kai'Sa, having a champion that you can just try to get some value with is important for later. The other thing that this does nicely is if you can get it to stick on the board for a turn, then it trades profitably into, or it attacks profitably into a Thousand-Tailed Watcher, as long as you have one of your 5-drop spells, which is you almost always do. So this is a big value to get on that. Yeah, I think this is just a good option to have in the background, and just as a single slot on your sideboard, I think that's a pretty low cost to play to give you a card that is better when you really can't rely on Lux Crown Guard surviving. So that was the deck list. Let's go over the matchups that I faced. Round one was against a Kaisa. They won the I won the die roll, went first, but did not find early bodies. So it was a kind of hard, grindy matchup. I wasn't able to get early points to try to make it anywhere, and I don't remember which battlefield they were running. If it was the first game or it was the second game where they were running the extra point battlefield. I'm pretty sure I'm remembering that correctly. But the first game was pretty close. I made it go for a very long time, and the opponent was able to get there just through retreats and Kaisa Survivor as just a strong engine that it was really hard for me to interact with. Then in game two, I did get the game. I think I ran the Arena's Greatest, and I caught them off guard, not knowing that they were going to be trying to play a turn faster. So they didn't end up finding the early guys as early into the game. And I was able to take advantage of getting ahead and then using a unchecked power near the end of the game after I'd retreated my guys. They moved in, tried to do a double hold, and I unchecked power, was able to wipe their board and then get in through the following turn. So that worked out for game two. Then game three, I had all of the removal I needed, but my opponent had all three of their retreats and their chosen champion Kaisa, and they got through, and I think it was 3 turns in a row. They retreated their Kaisa when I tried to remove it, and I just couldn't keep up with the card advantage at that moment. Just a lot of difficulties keeping up there. Round two was against Master Yi. They were on Aurora Master Yi. Game one, I could tell that they were doing Aurora because they ramped so aggressively early on, and I was able to keep it almost stable, but I did eventually run out of the big removal spells, and because they had stuff like Mountain Drake and stuff like that, I was unable to clear 1 or 2 of their big bodies, and they were eventually able to push through. They definitely were running the Aspirant's Climb or the extra point battlefield for game one, and it definitely got them there. I got to 8 points, but never got to the 9th point before they were able to stabilize and get back into the game. Game two, I was running Arena's Greatest, and I just kind of ran them over. I don't think they ever found their Aurora in game two, and I was able to use my Hidden Blades to get rid of their big guys this time around. This was the game where I was able to ambush them again with another unchecked power. They almost were stable in the game, and then I was able to uncheck power to set up for a final turn where I did end up getting the game. And then in game three, I was on Tarragon, and my opponent did find their Auroras probably 1 turn later than they wanted to, but when they went to sabotage me the turn ahead of it, I had 2 salvage. Is that the right name? I've got to remember. Yeah, 2 salvage in my hand plus an unchecked power. They had to take unchecked power and just hope that I couldn't deal with the remaining big body on board. But unfortunately for them, I was able to kind of punch through with a grand stratagem to punch through that final board that they were able to assemble. So moving into round 3, I was 1-1. I went up against a Yasuo. Unfortunately for my opponent, they just didn't find much in the way of bodies. The few bodies that they were able to find, I was very easily able to clear with my removal spells. really demonstrating. I do think that Lux is on the edge of playable. I think it's just really the Kaisa matchup is really tough because they run both so many little bodies, which are hard for you to clear a bunch of bodies without being able to run Falling Star yourself. And then the card draw from Kaisa Survivor and the ability to protect it with Retreat was really big. I do think that in the next set, when we get the counterspell in mind, I think that's going to be really helpful because you can get around Retreat. Retreat was really the card that breaks the Kaisa matchup, just because you end up using 5 energy to their 1. And they have already gotten to draw a card most of the time off of the Kaisa. And it's really hard to come back from that, especially if they do it more than once. But outside of Kaisa, I think there's a lot of decks that you really have a good game plan into because your opponents have difficulties actually protecting their board. I haven't actually played against the Annie, but that one I can imagine also being a little bit difficult. Just because the fighter flights can dodge some removal, not all of it, but some of the removal spells, and you, if they dance around too much, you will get got. But like Master Yi, not really too difficult because your removal spells line up well into them. You just really have to hope that they don't fully stabilize behind an Aurora or a bunch of Dead Bloom protectors. But a lot of times you can just 1-for-1 them all day using your legend ability to stay ahead. So it works out pretty well against Master Yi. Against Set, I've had good luck, even though they can revive their guy every turn. If you tax their buffs sufficiently, you can really get ahead of them in a longer game. Especially if you can use the singularities to get around 2 guys. You're always getting something off the board, and then trying to get your points off of your little guys. It's just worked for me in the past. Yasuo, it's another one where I think you can get ahead of them. Well, you can keep them from getting too far ahead of you because you can just continually remove all of their guys. It's not like they're playing around a 4 might, you just get to delete whatever they're playing. But I just think that there's a pretty good argument for Lux in the future. I don't know if the correct mix of cards is in the game right now, but this is definitely one I want to hold on to for the future. Just hoping to find the right mix of cards to make it work. But as I was saying with the Yasuo deck, they never did find much in the way of bodies, and you were able to just always 1-for-1. They play their Sona, move it in, you kill it. They play a green Yasuo from their champ zone, you kill it. And there's just a lot of removal, where if your opponent didn't find a bunch of extra early bodies, you get pretty far ahead. So that was how my Nexus Night went. This was the first time I'd actually played a best of 3, and I actually quite enjoyed it. I'm not 100% sure on my sideboard and battlefield strategy, but it seemed to work reasonably well. I feel like I was performing pretty well during the evening, and I don't really regret any of the decisions I made all that much. And I'd be interested in playing some more best of 3s. I don't think that I have a strong preference for best of 3 over best of 1, but it was definitely an interesting change of pace, and it would be one that I would be interested in kind of balancing back and forth between the two. Looking forward to next week. I think it depends a lot on how many people we play. I was going to play Yasuo this week, and if we do best of 1 at this Nexus Night, I will probably play Yasuo. But if we do best of 3 again, I think I will stick with Lux just as a card, one that I feel pretty comfortable with. The deck list at this point, just need to make a few small tweaks, but the core of the deck is all there. But yeah, that is kind of my thoughts for Riftbound for the week. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next Sunday for the next video. Bye.